Mr. Paul Kibugi Muite,
Yes, sir.
you are an aspirant to become president of this country as leader of the Safina party. Thank you very much for coming and welcome to the JSO interview.
May I start by correcting you? Before receiving the certificate of nomination, I was an aspirant. Now, I am a candidate.
Qualification taken.
Thank you.
May I ask the first question?
Certainly.
The understanding is that you become an aspirant without having made any prior preparation that is anywhere as elaborate as your competitors, and that you're coming into the field as a spoiler to split the vote in such fashion that one might force a recount, a revote, but the idea of being a serious contender for the post itself, that is totally out of the question. How would you respond to that?
John, I doubt that anyone, certainly not me, would take the serious step of running for the office of the president casually. True, I have not had the money to flash around with the helicopters and that sort of thing, but there has been a lot of preparation. I've been to more than 30 counties on the ground talking to people. I may not have been flamboyant in terms of even attracting the media attention, but I have been around. That is how we got over 2,000 registered voters joining the party in more than 30 counties.
So why did you abandon the other 17?
So I have not abandoned.
Or ignore them?
I have not ignored them. I'm just saying what I have covered. And before the elections in the remaining time, I will cover the remaining counties. There is no county that I would want to ignore. I'm just answering your question. This is not something casual.
Yes.
I've been to the ground, I've sat down.
I didn't suggest casualness. I suggested that you might be serving an alternative agenda. You can be very committed to...
I think that is, let me dismiss it as being silly, not true, and far-fetched. Anybody who has studied the track record of Mr. Muite will know that I cannot be used by anyone to serve anyone's agenda. When some of us have sacrificed and given the best part of our lives, and John has been a sacrifice at the personal level, at the material level, at the level of liberty. It's not been a walk in the park. Ushering in multipartyism, ushering democracy, increasing the democratic space. Some of us had a vision for this country. The new constitution was not an end in itself. We knew it was a means to an end. That vision is yet to be realized. So let's distinguish between people who go in, what is in it for me as Mr. X, and those of us whose vision and dream has always been to get Kenya out of being a third world country. Because 50 years after independence, we are still part of the third world. Thinking how we can...
I take your point entirely, but the whole idea of going to elections, the whole idea of having people vote, is to having people vote for you. And people have a very concerted numbers game.
True.
You are better aware of the fact than I am that people are making certain alliances that work to appeal to a certain constituency. We're not saying that what you stand for is in itself invalid or to be dismissed out of hand. We're saying that you have no chance of being president.
John, that will be decided by the Kenyan people when they cast their ballots. But let me respond more substantively to the picture you paint, that people are mobilizing because without beating about the bush.
Along ethnic lines.
Exactly.
For what? Yes.
Exactly.
And you're not going to play that game and somehow, maybe your time hasn't come, Mr. Muite. Maybe we have to wait another 50 years in terms of the continuum. Maybe we have to wait to be ready for you.
Listen, John. No country in Africa can continue to live on borrowed time permanently. And this ethnic balkanization playing our politics, which by the way is forbidden in the new constitution, forbidden even in the Political Parties Act. But we persist to mobilize along ethnic lines. we are playing around with time bombs. Mr. Muite will not be party to it. And there has to be somebody who is a lighthouse.
Right.
The reason why there is a lighthouse is to prevent ships
Right.
from hitting.
So you're a guide. You'll give us a way of showing.
Let me say this, John.
Yes.
During the colonial times, the socio-economic policies in the colonial period were favoring a small class of people at the top, exploitive of the majority. At independence, we adopted the same policies, economic and social. That is what was there in the first regime, second regime, and even in the third regime. That is where Kenya is amongst the top leading countries in terms of the gap between the rich and the poor. This is what I want to change.
I dare say that I really do think that in terms of the time given to us, this idea of the history of the movement, we don't have time for that. I would like very much to focus on the future and on your future as our president. I'm not denying the fact that you might become our president. I'm going to take you back in time because we're moving towards elections. Last elections, you're on record, if I may quote your own words.
Can I just make one point, John?
May I quote your words back to you to move the conversation forward? Because you're saying there's a historical continuum, the promised land is yet to come. In 2007, you said, may I quote, "I blame Kibaki for what happened in 2007. Had he and his cabal of advisors listened to what I had proposed to them then, believe me, Kenyans would not have shed blood." If the interest is not to shed blood this time round in your bid to become president, what did you tell him then that you might repeat to us now?
The referendum on the then draft constitution, the old one, the bombers one, Kilifi one, whatever you want to call it, was lost in 05. So 06, we are facing 07 elections without a new constitution and without any reforms. It was clear to any thinking mind that we're not going to be able to have free and fair elections, that we are going to be perceived to have been free and fair without some constitutional and legal reforms. There was no time for a new constitution. It was towards the end.
So you'd have said postpone the election.
What happened?
You'd have said postpone the election.
No, let me explain, John Sibiokumu. I was chairing the parliamentary committee on the constitution and legal affairs. And the members of my committee said it's our responsibility to guide the country on how the elections could be held that would be free, fair, and be accepted as having been free and fair, so that even the losers would accept the results. So we came up with a package of reforms. The top reform was the Electoral Commission. We had proposed that the members who are going to conduct the 07 elections, their names be taken to Parliament, be vetted, and waidhinishwe na bunge. For the simple reason that the law then permitted a presidential candidate to hardly pick the chair and the other members of the commission. Would you agree with me that you're still taking us back in time? And I wanted to take us forward to your presidency. John, you've got to give me... No. You've got to give me the opportunity to answer a question you put to me. You've asked. You said if Kibaki had listened to you.
Yes.
That is what I'm explaining.
Right.
We had a package of reforms. Electoral Commission, and I was just saying it cannot be fair for me as a presidential candidate to hardly pick the chair and the commissioners to conduct elections in which I am a candidate. Even if I win, I have no moral authority to ask. That was one.
I think I understand
50 plus 1 and so on and so forth. That was blocked. And what I was saying, and I repeat it today, is that if that package of reforms had gone through, we would have had free and fair elections, would have avoided the ICC, the losers would have accepted the results. It was a failure, refusal to accept that package of reforms that was purely targeted at elections to give us time to get a new comprehensive constitution that is a genesis of the clashes. And I say then and I say today that Uhuru Kenyatta and the other people at the ICC are not the ones who should be there. The Rome Statute is very clear. Those with the highest responsibility. Accused number 1 should be Mheshimiwa Kibaki. Accused number 2 should be Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga. They were the candidates. They are the ones who should show them.
They were the captains of the ship.
Absolutely.